Hi, everyone, and welcome to our education series today. This will be your place for tips and best practices to help strengthen your abilities with your Gimmal Physical software. My name is Marcia Shields, and I'm from our customer success team. I'll be your host, and joining us today is Tim Butler, who's your subject matter expert. We are very happy to have you with us to kick off 2026, and whether you're joining us live or watching the recording later. In today's session, Tim will be reviewing ad hoc reporting. Thanks, Tim. Just a few housekeeping items before we get into the meat of it. The session will run for about 30 minutes, which will include time for any questions that you have. Please submit the questions at the bottom of your Zoom bar. You'll see the Q&A area. You can submit those there. I'll be keeping an eye on them, and I'll tee those up for Tim once he's done with his presentation. And as a reminder, we are recording, and this webinar will be shared after the event via email and also on our YouTube channel. Next slide, Tim. Thank you. As we did last year, we are still continuing on with our Education All-Star program. So just for attending today and also completing any surveys we have along the way, you are earning points. So we really appreciate that, and obviously want to reward your efforts for being here. Last year, our top all-stars were listed here, Alexia, Rob, and James. So maybe you can get on the list for 2026. Before we kick things over to Tim, I'm going to launch a quick poll question if you all could oblige. Today's question is, what is or what would be the primary reason you export data out of Gimmal Physical? We'd love to hear what your input would be on this. Let that go for just a few seconds. We're getting answers in, Tim. Not sure if you can ever see that, but
I cannot.
Okay, I'll keep you in suspense. We got half people, maybe a couple more. Okay. Oh, getting more answers. Almost good participation. Thank you. So, leading answers. I'm going to end the poll and I'll share results. I think you can see it that way, Tim.
Yep.
Yeah. So there we go. 50% is the winner, and that is to provide to others as is.
All right, good. Yeah, good for me to know. It's excellent.
Okay. All right, Tim, I'll hand things off to you.
All right, excellent. All right, yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us once again on one of our webinars here, educational webinars. Today, as Marcia mentioned, we're going to be looking at ad hoc reporting. And to kind of just level set for everyone, guys, under the broader topic of how do you get data out of Gimmal Physical, right? There's overall two big categories there. There is sort of the formal reports. So I've clicked on reports here. You're seeing a bunch of reports I've already run previously, but down below are the list of stock reports that come with your system. Depending upon your exact configuration, this may appear slightly differently. You may have more, you may have less. I think most of you are aware that you can also create custom reports. I guess that's sort of ad hoc in a fashion, if you will. It does require Microsoft Report Builder. Gimmal can do that for you, or you can do it for yourselves. Then you can then embed those custom reports directly into this screen. We will be spending some time later this spring on an education session dedicated exactly to reports, but I wanted just to introduce it here that you have this ability, right? Stock reports that come with the system. And I do want to dig just a little bit deeper on one of these here. I want to draw your attention to box pick list. If you look up above, you can see I've executed a couple of pick lists already before the session started. If I click on this one, just want to draw your attention where it says, hey, there's 35 boxes that are requested. Whereas if I click on the one that's right above it, you're going to see a different number. In fact, there's only 11. And the reason for that is because this pick list was filtered, and you kind of see a definition of the filter here. Let me close that, come back to the pick list page. And I think most of you are aware, but just to make sure, for any of these reports, you can just run them as they are. You can use a simple filter, or you can also use an advanced filter, which is what I did for that second report, right? So I created a filter. I call it Butler request. You can call it whatever you want. And if you're a little bit technical, you can look down below to see what it did. It really said, hey, only show the request where the requester had Butler in it. So in a fashion, these are ad hoc reports as well, where you can dynamically add these filters. You can actually save the filters and for later use. And that's what I did here. So not exactly the focus of our session today, but wanted to level set, make you aware that big category number one for getting data out are those what I call the formal reports, which you can take as is. You can create them custom yourself and add filters should you so desire. All right, with that out of the way, let's come back to the topic at hand, the ad hoc reports. So guys, here I am on the boxes tab in demo land. And there's really two flavors, I like to say, of ad hoc reports. There are HTML-based ad hoc reports, and there's also CSV ad hoc reports. I'm going to do a query here to kind of illustrate for you to make it hopefully a little bit realistic. So I'm on the boxes tab. I'm saying, hey, Gimmal Physical, show me all the boxes that were eligible for destruction sometime in 2025. We get our number right here, 129 boxes that were eligible. And sure enough, if you look at all these scheduled disposition dates, they're going to be in 2025 somewhere. The easiest way to get data out of Gimmal Physical, guys, is this little printer icon right here. Super simple. You simply click on it. It's going to load up a new tab, and pretty quickly, it's going to launch what you were just looking at in that homepage grid results, but in HTML format, so that you can very quickly just click that button. I'm not going to do it for our webinar here today, but you click that, you send it to your local printer, and very quickly you get an ad hoc report that's really just a reflection of what you were just looking at back on the homepage grid. Now, it is what it is, guys. There's no further manipulation that you can do to those HTML ad hoc reports, but what you can do, and I think most of you are familiar with this as well, if you want some other data field in that report other than what you see here, that would be an opportunity for you to go under admin, to go over here to field display, make sure you choose the tab that you're working on here, boxes. And this is really kind of the magic column right here. Only those fields that say show and homepage grid, only those fields will actually be candidates to be included. So I'm going to add an additional field here. I'm going to add box size. Again, I think most of you have done with this. You're familiar with it, but specific to the ad hoc reports, if you want to get that additional information into the HTML format, you've got to first come here, add it as an output field or a show on the homepage grid, so that when you go back to the homepage grid, you now have an additional field, and there it is. And I won't actually do it now, but if you click the button again, you'll get the same report you had before with just an additional column. So down and dirty, pretty easy. You simply, on any tab of the application, wherever you see this printer icon, you can get an HTML-based ad hoc report to just show you what you're looking at right here. So under the heading of ad hoc reports, flavor number one, HTML. Now, let's make sure we're still looking at the 129 boxes. Let's run it again just to kind of start from ground zero. So I've come in, I've said, hey, show me all the boxes scheduled for disposition in 2025. Still looking at the same 129 boxes. If you want a little more flexibility, in fact, a lot more flexibility in terms of your ad hoc reporting capability, rather than clicking the printer icon, what you can do instead is go to the export page. Now, the export page just gives you a lot more possibilities for what you want to do with this data. The end result is eventually going to be here that you're going to get a CSV file. The CSV file, of course, you can then load that up into Microsoft Excel or Power BI or any of the other spreadsheet ready type applications and do whatever additional fancy stuff it is you want to do. But please be aware, coming out of Gimmal Physical, it is more or less just the raw data. I want to make an important point here, guys. When it comes to the export functionality, the CSV-based ad hoc reports, every single data element that's in your application can be exported. There are actually a couple of minor exceptions to that that deal with security that we won't get into now, but on the whole, whatever data you look at in our example on the Boxes tab, you can also then export that data into a CSV file. Now, I want to just start at the top of this page and work down to make sure you guys are familiar with all the bells and whistles, how this guy works. Probably the most important one right up top. Had I actually selected a few records ahead of time, I would see a number other than 0. I'm going to go ahead and just check that right there to say, you know what? I'm going to go with all the records that were in that last query, 129. Something that's relatively new in just later versions of the software is this new control that says select table. In fact, it never used to be there at all. We just assumed if you were on the Boxes tab and you're going to export data while you're working with boxes, well, we still sort of assume that, guys, but I'm going to drop it down to kind of uncover here what has been added in recent versions. It used to be the case in older versions of Gimmal Physical for that data, and apologies for speaking technical here for just a moment, for the data that was in a many-to-many relationship with boxes, it actually used to be the case you could not export that data. Those were the exception to the rule. You just couldn't do it. Well, starting just back in version 4 here, maybe 3.15, I forget exactly when we introduced this, but you can now, for that data that is in a many-to-many relationship, and I'm going to focus on legal holds for just a moment, a little easier to explain. In terms of the many-to-many concept, you obviously are going to have many boxes in your application, and almost always you also have many legal holds that you have cataloged. Well, a single hold can be tied to one box, a single hold can be tied to multiple boxes, or multiple holds can be tied to a single box, or multiple holds can be tied to multiple boxes. That's just kind of the common vernacular for explaining a many-to-many relationship. In the end, what that means is it's not linear. We can't just produce a single row of data to explain the relationships that are here. So we introduced that capability, and I'll show you the output example in just a couple of moments. But for now, probably 9 times out of 10 at least, when you do an export, you're just going to leave the table, the default table selected. But if you want to include and also get exported to many, you're going to choose one of those. All right, working down here. Enter the field delimiter. We guys over the years have defaulted the field delimiter to this vertical bar or pipe character. And the reason we do that is you rarely see that character in your actual data, which is why we do it. A lot of folks are used to a comma. You can definitely change it to a comma, but if there's commas in your data, it then means you're also going to have to add a text qualifier, which usually is the double quote, so that the output can be sorted the way it needs to be. So my advice, unless you've got really good reason, just leave it as a pipe character, and you may have good reason to change it, which I'll try to touch upon in a few moments here, but on the whole, leave it alone, leave that alone. File prefix is purely cosmetic, guys. If you want to add some sort of explanatory note to the file that will be created, go ahead and put in any file prefix you want. Notice here 2 output formats are supported, both CSV and text. I'll come back to this a little bit later to highlight the differences. And then a really useful little checkbox here, guys, this remove carriage returns. The idea behind this, guys, is of all the controls that are available in Gimmal Physical, you know, the date fields and the checkboxes and the list and most of the text fields, they all work just fine when it comes to exporting the data. However, if you have any what we call multi-line select boxes, or multi-line text boxes, I should say, sorry, those text boxes, if you just keep typing while you're in there, let's say you've got 500 characters you want to type into some field. If you just keep typing, it will actually auto-wrap for you, which is what we recommend. But some people, especially from the old school, are used to that. They're watching as they type. They see it getting close to the end of the text box, and then they hit the enter key, which is fine. It just brings you down manually, and you can continue to type. The problem with that is that enter key actually introduces characters into the text, which, if you don't check this box, it can create issues for you when you export, because it then takes a single data line and can wrap it into 2 separate data records, because the CSV or the text or your Excel program will see that and think, oh, it's a new line. And so it just shifts it down. So my recommendation here is just always leave that check, especially if you have the multi-line text box that's going to be a part of your export. Now, down below, the really important stuff, like what data do you want to actually export, you can highlight a field, you can click a button. You can actually double click the field and it will pop over. You can use, guys, standard Windows type controls, right? If you highlight one field and you hit the Shift key, it'll select all the fields within. If you want to just grab a separate, disparate fields, you can also use the Control key and do that kind of stuff. So you could just do one field at a time, but you can also select multiple fields. And then for convenience, we've also given you this Select All button down below that says, hey, take every single one of these fields and pop them over onto the right-hand side. So very quickly, just grab them all. Down below, something similar that you've hopefully seen elsewhere in the application. Guys, if it turns out that you need to run an export over and over and over again, maybe you've got a superior who once a week, once a month wants a particular report from you, that is a good candidate to actually create what we call an export profile. It's similar to when you're using advanced query. It's similar to the filters you can create with reports. We use this basic control in multiple places in the application specific to exports. It's really designed if you're going to be running the same export over and over again. The idea here is rather than as you come into the screen here and pick and choose fields each time, if you've previously saved some export profiles, you can do this kind of thing. You can choose from that profile, and now it's just remembering what you had previously created. What you're looking at in front of you right here, guys, is what I used for my examples for our education session today. And that's the stuff you see down here below. Now, I want to mention one other point, a little bit technical here. There are certain things that we do in Gimmal Physical that happen dynamically right in the browser. When you click the button, you wait for it to finish, and presto, it shows on the screen. There are other activities that we run, either you'll hear different phrases in a separate thread or out of process or as a service. What it really means in practical terms is it frees up the browser. You can do whatever you want to do while that activity runs in the background. Exporting is one of those activities. So after you've chosen the fields that you want and you set all these cosmetic features up at the top and you click on export, don't expect to see the export immediately. If it's just a few records, it will be just a couple of seconds. But if it's hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or even millions of data records, that will run in the background, and depending on a bunch of variables, will take differing lengths of time. In order to see your export file, the stuff you see down here, you either need to click that refresh button while on this page, or you can use the browser refresh button, or you can simply leave this page and come back to this page. Any of those work just fine to get this result set down here to refresh. And when the actual export is done, it will show up in this grid. Now, a couple words to the wise here, guys. Depending upon the output format that you selected, I ran this same export once as a CSV and once as a TXT. And I want to show you some subtle differences here. Virtually all browsers nowadays it will put this into your downloads folder. You could have configured that differently. It's in the downloads folder on my machine here. So when I want to launch the export output file, it goes to my downloads folder. In this case, it was a CSV. My machine, as most machines are set up, when it sees CSV, it ties that automatically to Excel. You could have actually configured your machine differently, but on the whole, most of you will see what I see here. Here's a couple of tips I just want you to be aware of. I'm going to leave this kind of window in front here. I'm going to focus your attention over on column A. This is my barcode field, which was a part of the export output fields. Notice that there's no leading zeros. It's because good old Excel, it tries really hard to be helpful, and it assumes you just don't want the leading zeros. Well, I actually do want the leading zeros. Your mileage here will vary, guys, based upon your version of Excel. In my version, it at least gives me the option. It didn't used to do this. I used to have to come in and do some fancy stuff to fix it. I'm just going to say, hey, don't convert. So when I don't convert, it says, fine, I'll let you have those leading zeros. Let me select all these columns, make it a little bit wider so you can actually see it. So here is now my export file. It's a CSV file opening up in Excel. One little tweak there to make sure I maintained my leading zeros. Okay, so please be aware of that. Let's minimize that guy. Let's come back now to Gimmal Physical. Let's go with, if you chose up for your output format up here, if you chose TXT as your output format, I'm going to go ahead and show you the output from that. Same basic idea. It loads up into the downloads folder, and now it's just opening up on my machine. It uses Notepad. Probably it'll do the same for you, but again, you could have configured it differently. With Notepad, if you're going to go down this route, and guys, there's occasions why you'd want to go either way. It just depends on your particular configuration. This by itself as a text file in Notepad is not nearly as useful because it really is just text. It's not configured in a nice way. So what you can do if you go with the TXT option is place your cursor into this file right here, do a Control A to select all the data, and Control C to copy it into your buffer. And then let's go back into Excel. Let's open up a blank workbook and paste this stuff in here. So now it's in Excel, but it's kind of under false pretenses. It kind of looks nice, but it's not actually that nice yet because it's actually, all of this data is all stuffed in column A. Excel fortunately has the nice little tool here in this situation because Excel does not recognize that little pipe delimiter that I'm using as the delimiter for Excel. There's ways for you to configure and change that, but if you see something like this, the easiest way to get past this is go to the data menu, go to the text to columns, you walk through a little wizard here. I'm saying, yep, this data is delimited. How is it delimited? It's delimited by not a comma, not a tab, none of those things, but by that pipe character. Notice now down below, and one more thing I want to show you here. So now I've got it in columns that Excel will understand. But again, because Excel is going to try to be really helpful, although it looks like barcodes with leading zeros right here, if you don't, on the barcode field in particular, come here and change the format to text, if you left that as general, you will lose those leading zeros. Depending upon your export, there may be other columns where you'd want to specify the exact format. In my case, it was just the barcode field. Let's do the same thing here with this spreadsheet, make the columns a little bit wider. And so now, in the end, you're kind of looking at the same, whether it was CSV or whether it was TXT, you got to the same end result with those options that were available. So let's close our Excel workbook here. Nope, I don't want to save that. I don't want to save you either. Thank you. And back. Close our Notepad and back to Gimmal Physical. Oh, I forgot one other. I promised I would do this. Let's jump back in there. I wanted to mention to you guys back here, this guy right here. So as part of an export, I said, hey, I want the data specific to legal holds as they're related to boxes. So when I ran that export, it produced this CSV file here. Same steps we'll jump through here. Let's click the CSV, open up Excel one more time. And pretty simple, but here you go. Here you go. Here are the fields that were available for the many-to-many. Just going to call out, and apologies, I know, guys, a little bit confusing, but here's the idea. This one box, this box 5952, it actually has two different holds. This is a reflection of that many-to-many relationship. This is how it gets exported. So it's not just a single row, although it's only one box. That one box has two holds, so we have to break it out into two separate rows within Excel. And no, I don't want to save you either. And so, guys, that in the end is kind of the overview of the ad hoc capabilities for reporting when it comes to Gimmal Physical. Again, just to recap, you've got formal reports on the reports page. You can filter those. You can create your own. But under the truly ad hoc reports on the fly, creating them, you've got your HTML possibility with the little printer icon right here, or to be a little bit fancier, to grab the export and produce the CSV or the TXT file. With that, Marcia, I want to open the floor up for questions or comments.
Perfect. My comment is, Tim, I need to pin you down for an Excel education session because those things are always helpful to me. Those little tips. We do have a few questions. So the first one I'll tee up is, are ad hoc reports available on all data tabs?
Yes, and probably should have mentioned this up front, guys. Most of you are aware a central component of the architecture in Gimmal Physical is what we call data tabs. these guys. And every single data tab operates exactly the same way. There is a little bit of variation depending upon the type of tab, but for all of them, they all have the HTML ad hoc possibility, and they also have the export CSV or TXT functionality.
Second question is, how do you enable or disable export on each tab?
Great question, guys. I'm going to broaden the question a little bit and call out this function, the HTML ad hoc reporting, as well as the cart functionality. These actions, there are no security rights surrounding these. We've never had any requirement for that. No one's ever actually asked for it. We don't see any reason to put them in. So please appreciate you don't have to do anything to enable the HTML-based ad hoc reporting. However, if you want to use the export functionality, let's jump into the security module here. And let's go edit a role. For every role for which you want to provide the ability to export, you then have to tab. So there's not just one right that says, hey, turn on exporting across all tabs, but rather tab by tab. So we were working with boxes today. If I expand that section, where are you? Export right here. So you got to turn that right on to give people in this role the ability to export boxes. The same right would appear in all the other tabs for that capability.
Thank you, Tim. And if there's one more, unless anybody else posts it, question is there a limit to how many data records that can be exported?
Yes and no. So I'm going to come back to the little technical conversation we had, guys. This guy right here, the HTML-based ad hoc reporting, we actually run this in the same process or the same thread. It's right in your browser. So if you query up lots and lots of boxes, and I don't know the exact number because it depends on a lot of variables, but probably roughly speaking, if you have more than 1,000 results in your results grid, don't click on that. It will probably time out. There's a place in admin where you can go to alter the timeout duration, but HTML was not really intended, this ad hoc report, for producing a report of lots and lots of data. Now, if you really do want to use this, you'll first have to go to admin. You'll have to change what's known as the command timeout to a higher number so that you can produce the HTML. Because when you click this button, it's going to try to draw as many boxes as you have here. So just word of the wise, don't do this if you're really talking about a lot of data. With the export functionality, though, pretty much the sky is the limit. Because recall, when you export data, it runs in a separate process, a separate thread. It runs in the background. Now, it too can eventually time out if we're talking lots and lots and lots of data. And you can also control numbers that surround that. But just generally speaking, if it's a lot of data, use the export, and no, there's no limit to the number. With HTML, there is sort of a practical limit somewhere around 1,000 records before you'd eventually see a timeout.
Great. Good answer for that. Tim, that's it on the questions. Thank you so much.
All right, good.
Just bounce back to the deck and we'll throw up the next slide. Yeah, there we go. All right. So that does bring us to the end of today's session, everybody. Thank you so much. We hope you found it helpful. As Tim mentioned earlier, the next session for Gimmal Physical is March 24th, and that will be on reporting in total. We hope you can join us there. If you have any ideas for sessions you'd like to see us cover this year, just drop us a line. Please let me know. We'll be happy to get those in the mix. But as always, thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.